When it comes to anime, there are loads of harem anime which consist of one guy and many girls. However, there are far less the other way around. The first ones that spring to mind are Ouran High School Host Club, Fruits Basket, and Saiunkoku Monogatari. The shows are out there, but they are much less prevalent than the staple of modern anime. Average male high school student drowning in female affection. This time though, we're not only reversing the formula, but we're also in the lap of the gods. Many gods. Not to mention they're pretty, despite being thousands of years old and quite devious too. Enter the mischief of the gods to cause some pretty boy havoc with us, while we try and keep a straight face. In this anime universe, the Western world has become rather distant towards religion, and by proxy its ancient gods. A selection of gods from Greek, Norse and Japanese mythology have been gathered by the mighty god Zeus to learn the ways of modern humanity and rebuild the connection they once had many moons ago. To aid Zeus in his endeavour, he has called upon shrine tender Yui from Earth to join them in this parallel world which looks very similar to a French mansion for some reason. This is designed to be a very high-end school with hundreds of students conjured up in thin air to add a tenuous schoolyard atmosphere, despite these gods being eons of years old and probably have far more important things to do, like take care of the sun, the underworld, and all fire. Zeus thinks it's okay for them all to be cooped up for a whole year to learn human empathy, or else be trapped forever! It all seems rather contrived and irrelevant to me. Perhaps Yui is meant to be a catalyst so as the gods can understand how human society has evolved so fast since ancient times, and achieved a far greater understanding about scientific and ecological principles, as well as enabling a higher philosophical yardstick to be attained. That, or so a girl can gawk at many hot attractive guys who seemingly can't wait to let the buttons burst off their rippling abs. That happens in a transformation sequence from the show, by the way. I am fully aware that this show is meant to be aimed at a female audience rather than a male audience, but even I can say that this whole premise is ridiculously hammy. So hammy you can make bacon from it and hear it oink. Ouran High School Host Club was hammy, but it made up for it with having an eccentric and engaging cast and premise. Mischief of the Gods doesn't have an engaging premise. It feels tacked on and rather tenuous. There's no real peril. The world won't be destroyed. If this disconnect was all a real problem, then all of the gods all over the world would be attending. In this case, there are only 9, where 6 are main characters. I don't see Aphrodite or Odin here, let alone any of the Hindu gods. Clearly these guys are lazy slackers. Lazy, sexy slackers. When Yui is transported to the school, she meets several of the characters, and they're met with blossoming flowers and equally flowery music and sparkles. It's so over the top that I was left dumbstruck with how cheesy this was. I'm not sure whether this was meant to be a spoof or a nod to the original dating sim game which was made 6 months prior to the anime being released. It's so strange and confusing that I was left laughing and feeling bemused at the whole shebang. Even Zeus was doing it, transforming into a teenage boy who had seemingly attractive looks just to prove a point. The aforementioned game has reputation for being a bit of a mess, unfinished, repetitive endings and rumours of traced artwork / elements, but it was at least nice to look at. Brainspace, the animation house for this show, did a decent job at the character designs, but the animation seems a little slow and minimal in terms of movement when compared to other shows. Having said that, the personalities of the gods seem to be true to their real-life counterparts. For example, the Norse god Baldur was a fair god of light and purity. He was a popular god, and everyone who met him would extol positive sentiments about him about his kindness. Baldur in the anime is the only god, prior to Apollon, who's shown a gentle hand to Yui when she stumbled onto the scene, before tripping over her and landing amidst the flower bed. It's enough to get some girls hot under the collar, and indeed Baldur is an attractive person in the show. But the whole idea of these ancient gods being turned into vapid pretty boys seemed both farcical and somewhat offensive for the people who still appreciate or indeed worship them. For me, it's more the former in that I couldn't take this idea seriously, due to the sheer amount of cliches there were in this, despite the relatively well-researched character models. It didn't help that Yui's personality isn't equally as strong as some of the gods. She is a kind person who tended her family shrine, and clearly someone who isn't a jerk and understands love, but she has little character outside of that. She's a good person, but with little to extinguish her from her archetype. Not to mention she is effectively being held hostage by the most powerful gods in the world, kept away from her parents who would be going through the greatest anguish and toil, whilst their daughter goes off to do a job that the gods should be doing themselves. In the end, Mischief of the Gods shouldn't be deeply analysed. The deepest it goes is informing the audience what seems sort of obvious already. Religion ain't what it used to be. The rest of the time is spent ogling at pretty gods who seem to have nothing better to do than humour a human girl and not do their jobs. I understand that I may be being hypocritical for being so anti-reverse harem. I should think equally when it comes to these things. But even if you were to swap the genders, the idea still seems ridiculous. It feels like a bunch of rich boys toying with a peasant girl and patronising her something silly. This show doesn't stack up for me when it comes to the plot. In fact, it makes me fall over in laughter for how stupid it is. I will give credit for the artwork, if not for the overall animation. It's not bad to look at when things don't or barely move. Other than that, it's not worth your time. Mischief of the Gods is available to stream on Crunchyroll. My rating? Cancel. A facile and empty shell of a mythological boy fest. If you like what you heard, please visit my Patreon campaign to help grow Anifile at patreon.com/MasakoX, or follow me on Twitter at MasakoX.